Hello people, so let's talk about sliders. It was a very long time ago when this show was running at the beginning of or the middle of the 90s, and it was a semi-good sci-fi show. It was entirely episodic, although it was one of the groundbreaking series of the serialization because before Sliders all shows were entirely episodic. Nothing had consequences on the later episodes. It was just this adventure, this happening, that event. Sometimes the permanent cast got a promotion in universe or something, but that was it. That just opened more possibilities of the weekly monster episode or crime episode or investigation of whatever. That was it. But then came Star Trek Voyager or Star Trek Deep Space Nine, not Star Trek TNG. The next generation of Star Trek only had a semi-coherent central plot that the show could follow. This central plot can be anything from getting home like the Voyager to a single big bad boss like, I don't know. TNG tried to make a lot of things as a central enemy. The what was this big ear monsters running around and Borg and whatever, but everything fizzled out after Tasha Yar died. So that was an entirely bad decision to try to Blu-ray that show. Back to Sliders. So Sliders tried to have a central core character pieces running around in the multiverse, and every week, in every episode, we landed in a different universe. So everything was independent from the core characters. I say core characters because they were the POV character for the audience, but actually they didn't end up to be the main characters, and that was the show's main problem. The central problem was that they were ending up in this multiverse, not knowing where they come from, how to get home. So the goal was, for 2 or 3 seasons at least, to get home. It's a very simple premise. It can be worked very simply. It's way more simple than X-Files, which solved this serialization central plot thing with having the Monster of the Week thing, and every 2 or 3 episodes in a season have this main plot episode, and yeah, that was interesting. But Sliders try to have a character dynamic within the group. They started with Professor Arturo, the supposed mentor figure for Clean Mallory, who invented this new multiverse traveling gadget. Uh, the everyday man, this singer, the black guy, yes, he was, you could say, token black, but he developed over that, so it was fine. And there was Wade Wallace. Wade was the hollow character who believed in all kinds of spiritual things. The problem with Wade, oh, everyone loved Wade. There is no question about that. The problem with Wade, aside being the pretty girl, the small pretty girl who everyone could fantasize about, let's face it, that's just a fact of life, was that her spiritualism never came handy. There was literally an episode where the group ended up in a spiritual technology based work where magic literally worked. So they never really developed any technological thing, but they encountered a character who solved their problems through science. That's all the wrong message for and character building for Wade. And there, they immediately got into trouble because of Wade, because the naughty little spiritual believer sold her fucking brain. So that was something that they had to reverse. Yes, Wade was not a very intelligent character, was not on science, was not an everyday person, and sucked in her own field. So when they wrote out, it was a very lucky accident. A lot of the times, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer worked on this premise. Episodic show, we develop it on the whim. When something happens, when we have to change and make a drastic decision, it benefits the show. Buffy was entirely based on that. David Boreanaz had to go, great, we made an absolutely great show. Uh, we had to do something with the brown hair brunette girl. Good, we made a great season with her in Angel. Willow had this romance with the wolf guy, Seth Green. And Seth Green had to go do his own thing. I hated that plot. That was so convenient and comfy. I was happy they got rid of Seth Green so they could get in the Terminator class and finally the lesbian Willow Power Witch. Great character, absolute best storyline ever. So Wade was a fucker. In the spiritual world episode I just mentioned, uh, who put them out of trouble was the other queen. The other queen is actually the main character of the show, despite appearing once per season. The whole show starts with the other queen showing up and solving this MacGuffin, this multiverse traveling device for Queen, because he's an alter ego from another world of Queen. Yes, that happened. So, later, and this is the key focus problem of the show, to get home, because they are lost in the multiverse, how do they do that? They obviously have to improve this traveling device. Do they ever do that? Do the mentor and the inventor get together and do all kind of math while the others get into adventures? Never. They never invent anything. They never enhance anything. They never develop technology. They never look after it. They don't even have time. By the way, in most episodes they land in 2 to 3 words in average. Not counting those that will happen in the next episode. So it's all a jumbled mess. And Arturo and Quinn, not working as a mentor-student duo, were entirely redundant because both of them were the science guy. It's like having two Bill Nye in your show. That's stupid. Won't work. Did not work. So when they wrote out Arturo, it was a very great episode and very cinematic and everything. I praised the show because one, Arturo was not a nice character who you rooted for. Two, he was redundant. The show never needed two science guys. So the other queen showed up at the very first episode, solving this traveling device, and later he was the person who will enhance the traveling device. He was the main character. He was the only one who affected the multiverse. He affected them. He was responsible for the Chromax. He was responsible for everything. There was another show, Primeval. It was also a time traveling multiverse messing show in 2007, very similar promise to Sliders. There it also turned out that the main character was not in the core group, the POV group. Simply not. Again, and the main character the show was revolving around was a character which showed up once per season, maybe twice per season. Because for a time traveling show, which actually that a time traveling show or film teaches you to focus on what is fixed. That's the important thing. That's what the Wars project is built around. And for Primeval, in the fourth season, I think, because it had a 5 season, in the fourth season, all of the main groups were switched, personal change because of the time travel thing. And the character who caused all of the events happening in the show was dead. So the fifth season was entirely needless. Absolutely just an epilogue, maybe? Not even that, because Baywatch Miami, that worked as an epilogue. For Primeval, not even that. It was just one more season because the show was popular and made money. So back to Sliders. The cast got changed. So after 3 seasons, Professor Arturo got written out, and Wade was also written out very soon. But when Arturo went out, we got Kari Woorer, aka Maggie Beckett. The show could develop with Kari Woorer into a more action-focused, action-heavy episode. And it was great because they started to run out of ideas. This was the problem with the Star Trek, the original series. Of the third series ran out of ideas, so they started to time travel, and it was bad. The time travel aspect for the Star Trek was developed into a very good series in Star Trek Enterprise. When Star Trek Enterprise tried to fill itself up with buffer episodes and just random weekly normal adventure episodes, it was terrible, absolutely unwatchable. But look at the 2 seasons, maybe 3. It was genius. Great show. 4.5 or 5.5. It was great. So, uh, the change of Professor Arturo, great. We got rid of the redundant character and we got a new personality. It was great. I welcomed it. Plus, she looked hot. She was not just this damsel in distress character like Sabrina Lloyd. Kari Woorer was the Sigourney Weaver type character on body shape and attitude. It was good. Sure, it was different, but it was time. So Sabrina Lloyd was written out, and for half a season, they were running with just a 3 person, and in season 4, episode 6, they brought in this Jerry O'Connell's brother or something, whatever. He was a very bland person, a farmer boy who had no idea about sci-fi and was socially awkward and very fast developed six-shooter per skill. It wasn't the personality trait. He just could absolutely like percentage shoot with pistols like I don't know any Western hero, but without the heroism. It was a weak character, but well, it served. But Jerry O'Connell, well, he had a relative, so he became kinda redundant, and to be honest, he got tired, and the show got tired, and where was the show going at this point? Just ask yourself. They got home like twice and lost to land at home again because they only know that they have to look for the creaking garden door and that got fixed. That was one of the reasons they traveled, moved forward again. What? So the shows broke in the Chromags. I will return to the Chromag in a second. Because of the Chromags, they started to develop this first world concept, which they either reached or not. It was very much needed. It never worked, it never got established, and it was just all a mess. Because the studio, like vertically the studio, uh, was still living in the entirely serialized area, despite the show trying its best to have an overarching plot or at least direction. But you know, how many times can you land at home and move forward again? And just imagine this: they land at home. What useful trade they learned? Nothing. Landing at home would be a very quick, this ended, end of story, happy ending, moving on, or it's a disaster because they have to make the paperwork to confirm they are who they are, get back from status dead, find a new job, which they all lost all connections and literally lost all skill and learning experience and working experience. It would be a tragedy. Moving on, so season 5 was the peak of Sliders, if you ask me. Just listen for a minute. They had 4 person in the group. Season 5 they had 4 characters in the group. Uh, Rembrandt Brown, the singer with a military background, uh, original cast member, a lot of experience in multiverse traveling. Kind of a leader figure. Karibura, the action personnel, who, by the way, in the background he had a husband who was in the science department, so she was not just a wild card, she was kind of focused. So she was a good subordinate for Rembrandt to know what is going on in this multiverse thing. There was Tembi Lockhead, this science girl character, who, face it, the show needed a science character because it was in a core level a science show. And there was this Queen Mallory guy who, the O'Connell brothers got fused together, I think. I'm not entirely sure what happened at this point. It was a long time ago. But this was a new actor, fresh to the show, no complaining, no baggage. He was kind of the wild card, but not with a military background, and so it was working well between or with all the other characters. He was not the military leader, was not the leader of the group, was not the science. He was the everyday man who was ready to jump into action. You could use him in all kind of scenarios, and because he never developed the quirk, so it was not crunched into a box. So the main problem of the show was where to get from where we started. So we couldn't go back home, and getting to the first word was kinda meaningless after a point, especially with the Chromax threat being so widespread. But here is the point. How many word sliders had? No one knows. Infinite. We can say, because there is no proof otherwise, the show had infinite words. So what was the real scale of the Chromax threat? Negligible. Because the number of words to conquer was infinite. So it was kind of pointless. Something had to be done, and the show had to end some way. And this is why I liked the ending, and I think that was the only possible ending at season 5. And that is why I like that the show never got renewed and never got continued. The end of the show at season 5 was the majority of the group, all 3 new faces, were left behind in a world the Chromag never could touch. So they settled down, entirely safe, start a new life. Rembrandt, the original cast, tried to travel further. So there was this, we still continue with the original cast. On the other hand, his survival, arrival into the next world was never ensured, and he never got a true purpose to continue. Yes, there was the Chromax thread, but I repeat, in an infinite multiverse, what's the point? What's the real consequence? There will always be another world. So this ambiguity, whether he traveled further or died, was perfect. The others settling down, representing the ending of the show from another perspective, marvelous. So that was Sliders.